Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Team Saaliga, for inviting me for this in this platform for sharing my knowledge with you. Today, I'll be speaking a little bit about the work I have done in my PhD from symmetry. It's titled
Yeah. Yes.
From Symmetry to Asymmetry: Structural Dynamism and Foraging Advantage in Argiope pulchella, Thorel, 1881. Okay, so the content of today's session will be something about, we'll be discussing about the orb webs, we'll be discussing about the structural dynamism in terms of symmetry, and also the advantages of web asymmetry. Okay, so coming to the orb webs, it is the most widely recognized and the classical type of a web. So we watching movies or we see ourselves also in our gardens. This is one of the most common thing which is very conspicuous, and it is a planar type of a web. It looks very beautiful, a circular concentric type of a circular type of a spiral web. And there are three common spider families that construct this type of web. Okay, so we have the Aranidae, we have the Euloboridae, and the Tetrachnatidae. So previously in few references, you would get Nephilidae also construct this type of web. Yes, Nephilidae, Nephilid spiders, they construct this type of a web, but then now Nephilidae is not an independent family, rather it is incorporated into the family Aranidae. And apart from the entirely circular orb webs, we also have certain type of derived orb webs. Okay, so derived orb webs are of two types. Number one is your reduced orb web, which is seen in the Hyptiotis species. So here we have a triangular picture. The second picture, if you can see, it is a triangular web, and this web is something but a reduced structure of the original orb web. That is one sector of it. Okay. And then we have the extended orb web. So in case of the extended orb web, they will be having usual plan of the circular orb web, but along with it, they will be having certain extra things added to the orb web. So this includes the barrier webs and the webs. Yes. So here in this picture has been taken from Robinson 1982, where this this is a type of a extended orb web, also called as the leather web. So here we can see that they have a circular orb web at the upper portion, and then they have an extended, vertically extended, larger lower portion. Okay, so this is a type of an extended orb web. And then again, along with the circular orb web, we will be having certain scaffold type structures just ahead or behind the orb web. So these types are known as the barrier webs. So there are certain function of the barrier webs. So in case of the orb weavers such as Argiope pulchella, they also create sometimes the barrier webs. So this barrier webs are created in the direction in which there is a more amount of disturbance the spider is getting. Okay, so barrier webs adds a protection against any sort of a predator or more amount of disturbance. Might be the wind pressure is very high to that direction, so a barrier web might be constructed in that area. So as we already know that spiders give out silk. So silk from a specialized type of a gland which are called as the silk glands, and they exude it out from an organ which are called as the spinnerets. So each of these glands present within a spider's body, there are different type of glands. Okay, so we have the flagelliform gland, we have aggregate glands, we have tubuliform or the cylindrical gland, then we have the minor ampullate gland, major ampullate gland, aciniform gland, and piriform gland. So each of this gland will secrete a different composition of silk. For example, if we point out in any one of this, the first one, let us take the cylindrical gland. The cylindrical gland produces the silk which has some quality which will help to, which is protective in nature, we can say, and it is used for covering the outer egg sac. So similarly, we can see the minor ampullate gland, it leaves out the silk which is used to make the auxiliary spiral. Then we also have the cylindrical gland which also produces the capture core threads. We have the aciniform glands which is used for wrapping away the prey which has been caught by the web. So different type of the spinnerets will release a different composition of the silk which has different properties. Some might be sticky, some might be very hard, some will be non-sticky. So this is a hand drawing which I made for Argiope pulchella. So basically, this diagram is to show you what are the different elements of a web. So the first one is the frame thread. Okay, the first one is the frame thread. So as we can see, it forms the outer part of the web. Then we have the radial threads which join to the center of the web. Then we have a structure which is called as the stabilimentum. We will be discussing it into the next slides. Then we have the center of the web which is called as the hub. Then we have the sticky spiral threads which forms the ring-like structures. And in case of orb webs, they are never a concentric ring or a complete ring. Okay, so they are formed in form of spirals, but they are not a completely circular structure. Then we have the anchor threads. So this anchor threads helps the web to get attached to a perfect substratum. So then if we see, can you show the next slide, please? Yes. So there are different functions of this web elements that we have shown in the previous diagram. So number one, let us see what a hub is. So hub is considered as the center of the web where the spider will rest and maintain its territory. In case of the nocturnal spiders, during the daytime, they will remain in their retreat. So what is a retreat? Retreat are certain smaller structures, might be a scaffold of silk, might be under a leaf, or might be some dry leaves attached to the substrate. So those are certain places which are protective in nature. So in case of the nocturnal orb weavers, during the daytime, this orb spiders generally live in their retreat. And when there is a, say by the evening time or by the night time, they'll just come out and stay in their web. And in case of the, in case of your diurnal orb spiders, they remain in their web all throughout the day and night. Then we have the frame threads. So these are the first web elements that are being laid down and that forms the basic frame within which the orb web is constructed. Then we have the anchor threads. So anchor threads are used for attaching the entire web to the substrate. Then we have the radial threads. Radial threads are the radius we can consider from the center up to the periphery. So they tightly hold the web and they are laid along the frame threads. And the main function is to transmit the vibration from the periphery of the web to the center and vice versa. And this provides a directional cue and also a quick access route for the spiders. So this is a basically, if we consider to be a large orb web. Now consider a prey got stuck into this web. So can you please next, press next. Yes. So a prey got stuck into this web. So what will happen if a prey gets stuck into the web? It will try to struggle, right? It will struggle and it will try to escape. Now, while it is trying to escape, it will try to emit vibrations all throughout the area. Okay. So if we consider this to be the different sectors of a web, we can consider the upper left half to be the first sector, upper right half to be the second sector, the lower part from the hub to be the third sector in the left side, and we have the rest fourth sector or the quadrant. So say suppose in this particular Argiope web, this prey had got stuck into the third quadrant or the third sector. Now this prey will try to struggle, and while struggling, this will move the web and it will emit certain sort of vibration. This vibration will be carried from the periphery up to the hub. So these vibrations are carried via the radial threads up to the center of the hub or the web, the center of the web, which is known as the hub, and this is the place where our Argiope pulchella resides. Now when the spider gets some sort of a load or a tension in the web and also is receiving some sort of vibration, it will first investigate the entire web. So how will it do so? It will try to pump or jerk the entire web. Okay. So while it is pumping and jerking the entire web, then it will be emitting the vibrations from the center of the web to the periphery of the web in all directions. Okay. So now the spider has a decision point. It will be plucking the radial threads and then it will be judging at which sector of the web it has much of a web load or the web tension, because the prey which got stuck into the web will also have some sort of a weight rest. So That weight and along with it, the vibrations which the prey is emitting, this will be some sort of a signal. This is a directional cue which has been received by the radial threads, and now the spider knows the direction at which point the prey is being trapped. So to your knowledge and one added information, this orb-weaving spiders, they have a very low visual acuity, and the main thing they rely on for foraging is the web vibration. So they are called as the sit and wait foragers. So they'll construct a web, which is a very time and energy consuming process. And then they will be waiting for a perfect moment when the prey will come and get stuck onto the web. And within a fraction of seconds, they have to identify at which sector the prey got caught. They have to run towards it, bite it, wrap it, and then they'll be feeding. The feeding will start. So amongst the other type of the web elements, we have the auxiliary spirals. So auxiliary spirals acts as a guide or the basic circular frame. So we know the first thing which has been laid out is the frame threads. Then there will be the radial threads and the center will be constructed. And after that, there will be the very big type of an auxiliary spirals, not the fine meshes. Okay. So this auxiliary spirals act as a guide or the basic circular frame, and following this, the sticky capture spirals. So I have written by mistake spiders, it will be spirals. So sticky capture spirals will be laid down later. So the next element we have the capture spirals. So these threads have a gluey substance added to it. So all the previous web elements which we have discussed, the frame threads, then we have the radial threads and the auxiliary spirals, they are not sticky in nature. That means they do not function to trap the prey. They have the function to make or stabilize the web. But then the main thing about the capture spiral is that along with the silk, there is some glue attached. The glue droplets are attached to the spiral. So in that case, what happens? This capture spiral is constructed or is released to as a function to capture the prey. The capture spirals are laid from the periphery up to the center, but it generally ends shortly before it reaches up to the hub. So there is always a space maintained between the capture area and the area where the spider is residing. So that zone is called as the free zone. And one of the functions of the free zone is to help the spider to toggle from one direction to another direction. See, the web itself is a planar. That means it is in one plane. So if it is on one side, sometimes in that side, if there is some sort of a predatory pressure, or might be there is some sort of a very high wing pressure or some sort of threat, the spider needs to move on to the opposite side. So free zones are the areas which helps the spider to toggle from one side to the other side of the web. Then we have another interesting thing. This is your web decoration. So in our previous slides in the diagram, we already saw there was some egg-shaped zigzag thing formed within our web, Argiope web. So that is a type of a decoration. So these are special features of web that hold several functions. And in case of Argiope spiders in adult, this decoration forms in form of an egg-shaped silk strands. Okay, so that is called as the cruciate shape. Egg shape means a cruciate shape. So in case of juveniles, they do not make this egg-shaped stabilimentum, rather they made a disc-shaped or a circular stabilimentum. So other species are there, for example, in case of Cyclosa, they are also the orb web spiders. They use the accumulated debris and the prey remains to decorate their web because they like to remain camouflaged within their web decoration. So we can have some sort of perception that web decoration helps in camouflaging the spider. Now the silk web decorations, which are also called as the stabilimentum. So this, though are present in most of the orb webs, these are actually not a constant feature of webs. What does that mean? That means whenever a web is constructed, it is not a hard and fast rule that a spider will always make a stabilimentum. So this leaves us a question. What is the actual function of this stabilimentum? So when first the stabilimentum was, say the word stabilimentum was given, it was thought that it helps to strengthen the web. Hence the name was stabilimentum. That means it will make the web stable. Yes. So there are several other hypotheses related to the function of the stabilimentum. So some functions which has been mentioned in these papers, Craig and Bernard in 1919 mentioned about the UV reflectance of the stabilimentum, which helps in attracting the prey. Then we have camouflaging property. As we can see in case of the second picture, it is an adult Argiope pulchella and the legs are just on top of the egg-shaped stabilimentum, which may appear or to the predator as a very big spider because the silk strands are extended to a length beyond the length of the legs. Then we have defense purpose. So Blackledge in 1998 had also said that because the webs bear the stabilimentum and the silk of the webs are very much thin and almost invisible. So this stabilimentum actually makes the web conspicuous so that a flying bird, if a web is made in the path of a bird, will not directly get the bird generally does not directly breaks away the web. So it makes the web more conspicuous. The number 4 is the aposematic warning. Aposematic warning is also something with looking bigger in size and showing actually it shows that it is much bigger in size, but actually it is very smaller in size. Then also another function which has been mentioned in the book of Felix 2011, that the stabilimentum acts as a guide during the courtship. That is, the male will get certain chemical cues from the stabilimentum and find the females. Then Humphrey in 1992 also mentioned about the protection against the heat, about certain sort of a thermoregulation. Then Eberhard in 1973 had said that stabilimentum is nothing but the deposition of excess swathing silk, which the spider uses to cover or make a food bundle out of the prey. So when the prey is been caught, it will be wrapping the prey, and the excess amount of the silk that keeps on coming out of the spinneret will be used to make the stabilimentum. So in the previous slide, there were two pictures. The first one was of the juvenile making a circular stabilimentum and the adult making a cross-shaped stabilimentum. And this slide will show you that stabilimentum, the general fact that juveniles always makes a circular stabilimentum and the adults always make a linear cross-shaped stabilimentum is not actually true. So I have been studying the life cycle of Argiope pulchella and I have got a large number of variation of the stabilimentum. So the first figure will tell you or shows you about a juvenile, and it has built a linear stabilimentum along with a circular or a discoid-shaped stabilimentum. Second picture on the top row shows you a linear continuous stabilimentum with entire two arms missing. Then we have an intermediate, instar, which is bigger enough. Still, it is making a discoidal stabilimentum along with an egg-shaped stabilimentum. Then the fourth picture gives us a picture of an adult Argiope pulchella, which makes a stabilimentum with two discontinued arms, actually 3 arms. So it is not that all the arms will be always positioned in an egg-shaped manner. And the fourth one gives us the egg-shaped pattern, but it is a discontinued thing. We have discontinuous stabilimentum, 4 arms are present. So during my research work, I got up to 6 arms. So it is always not 4 arms present for an adult Argiope pulchella. It can extend beyond 4. So the maximum I got are 6 arms of this stabilimentum present. So for an orb web, the web is an ultimate foraging strategy. So as we have already discussed, they don't have a proper visual acuity. They will have to make a web and lay down the sticky spiral so that the prey get trapped into the web. That means the web for an orb web spider is their ultimate foraging strategy. And making such a web, which will help you to maximize the number of the prey that has been trapped by a web, is a very time and energy consuming process because the entire web is made up of silk. So the time and energy invested to construct should be compensated with the number of prey captured by the web. So if you're constructing a web which does not captures a good number of prey, that means the site which you have selected for web construction may not be good, or the amount or the design of the web that you have made may not be proper for that particular area. So from an evolutionary standpoint, there should be an optimal balance between this gain or loss of energy that could be balanced by building a web with a web hub rightly placed. So this has been said by Maciejewski in 2019, that this loss and gain of the energy, that is the energy which has been invested in making the web and capturing the prey item, this can be somehow balanced by making an optimal shaped web. So this adjustment of how to make an optimal web can be done by adjusting the position of the hub in the web. Now we know that the center of a web is the hub. If your web is a perfectly circular web, the hub should be always at the center position. But now if we are making optimal web so that we can compensate for the loss of energy and get more amount of prey, in that case, we have to shift the hub. Okay, the hub may be shifted either to the upper portion or to the lower portion. So when we are shifting the hub to the upper or to a lower portion, we are displacing the hub. And this will result in formation of something which are called as the asymmetrical webs. So the first picture, which is a picture of a completely circular web, here we can see that the upper web area and the lower web area both are equal. So the upper radius and the lower radius are equal in size. In that case, this is a completely circular web where the hub is placed right at the center. Okay, so this type of architecture is generally seen in case of the juvenile spiders, where they make more or less circular type of a web. So in case of the adult webs, what happens? They invest more amount of your capture spiral in the lower web hub, thereby displacing the web hub towards the upper portion. So it makes your upper radius smaller in comparison to your lower radius. So now if we calculate the capture area of the upper half and the capture area of the lower half, we will be finding an asymmetrical type of a web, where you will be having a larger lower web area. So this is called as the hub displacement. Okay, this is a picture of a juvenile pulchella. So here, if you can see, we have the spiral threads all around, and the center portion is the discoidal stabilimentum, and the spider is actually in the opposite direction. Okay, and we have a certain area of hub, and the silk is very fine, so it might not be possible to see in this presentation. And then there is a gap between the capture spiral and the hub spirals, and that is an area which is called as the free zone. Okay, so we have discussed about the web asymmetry. Now we will be discussing about what are the different types of hypotheses which are present, which explains why asymmetrical nature occurs in orb webs. So there are basically the common 6 different type of hypotheses which has been laid down. So number 1 is the difference in the running speed or capture time hypothesis. So capture time hypothesis tells us something about that this asymmetry occurs because it takes lesser time to run and go towards the lower web area and capture a prey than to rotate and move towards the upper side of the web. So this is something about the capture time hypothesis, that is less time taken to handle a prey item. So there is a web asymmetry. Then we have the biogenetic law. Biogenetic law, we will be discussing this in the next slides. I'll just tell you about the other hypothesis. The third one is the time energy cost hypothesis. So we can find this in the very nice paper of Shoke and Klobowski in 2009. So according to this hypothesis, it has been said that the upper web hub requires more amount of energy because it is against the gravity. It is moving upwards. But constructing the spirals at the down portion will take more time but less of the energy. So if we balance between the time invested in constructing the upper half and the energy invested in constructing the upper half with that of the lower half, we will always find that the lower half is cost efficient. Hence, few spiders, they built a larger lower half. Then there is a size limitation hypothesis. So Hasselberg did not give this hypothesis, but rather he rejected his hypothesis. So I got this hypothesis from his paper in 2010. So size limited hypothesis tells something about that since spiders are smaller in size, they will be having an underdeveloped, say, nervous system or the brain. So they cannot make decision, rather the making of a circular web is something like genetically determined. So when they start first making the web, since they do not have much power to manipulate, they will be first making the circular webs. And then when they are exposed to the different environmental conditions, different predatory pressures, different prey present in the environment, depending upon the environment, they will be adjusting their web size, and then from symmetry, the web becomes asymmetrical webs. In the adult, they'll be having more amount of, say, what do we say? They are matured now to think about what are the different environmental cues, and then they can manipulate and construct the web. However, Hasselberg said that this is not a perfect explanation of why the web becomes from symmetrical webs to an asymmetrical webs. Then we have the last predation experience. So this was given by Raphael and mentioned in the papers of Raphael 2000 and Nakata 2013. And they have explained something about depending upon the what type of prey they got in their last experience, they will be adjusting their web asymmetry as per it. Number 6 is gravity. So effect of gravity has been given by Shoke in 1993 and mentioned by Witt, Pickle and Goss in 1997. So they say that the adult spiders have a very huge body mass. So since they have a very huge body mass, they are heavier. So moving up to the upper web half will be more energy consuming than directly capturing a prey in the lower web half. So they construct a larger lower web half so that they can conserve their energy and capture their prey efficiently. So out of the all 6 hypotheses which we have discussed, the 2 hypotheses of which one is a law. The first one is the capture time hypothesis and another is the biogenetic law. These 2 are the most widely accepted in case of orb-weaving spiders. So the first one is the theory that explains the web asymmetry is a result of the difference in the time required by a spider to capture the prey at different parts of the web. So the prey capture is likely to be successful if the spider can reach up to the trapped prey faster. So we know Argiope pulchella is a upside down spider. What does that mean? Upside down spider means the cephalothorax is pointing towards the down part and the abdomen is always towards the upper part. It is an inverted spider. So since it is an inverted spider, the direction at which it will run, if we consider we are running to one direction, the direction which we are facing, it will be very easy for us to run in that direction, rather to orient ourselves to an opposite direction and then start running, right? So capture time hypothesis also tells us the same thing. Since it is a downward facing spider, so if any prey is attached to the lower web half, the prey capture is more successful. So why the spider won't build a web which has a larger lower part? So the contribution to the larger lower part is because the spider is an upside down spider and it will help it to save the time and energy. Then the second one is the biogenetic law. So in biogenetic law, if we say this is a very widely accepted law which tells us ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. So this law we have already studied in our evolution chapters, which tells us that in the developmental process, there will be certain characteristics which is a reflection of its ancestral traits, right? So it is assumed that the construction of circular webs is an ancestral character, and web asymmetry is derived feature that occurs due to the adjustment of the spider with the environment. So when it first starts building the web, it will be making some genetically imbibed circular type of a web, and then it will be retaining those characters until and unless it matures and then gets exposed to different environmental conditions. So when it starts getting exposed to the different environmental conditions, different prey items in a particular environment, then it will try to manipulate, displace the hub, add more sticky spirals, create barrier webs, or depending upon the prey type, it may make a ladder web. Okay, so more features will be accumulated into the web design. So this web asymmetry is considered as a result of web plasticity, which is, plasticity means it is not rigid, right? So plasticity is something about depending upon the environmental conditions, a thing can be changed. So this web plasticity is been learned by the spider, and this biogenetic law has been reported, already has been reported in 19 groups of spiders, of which 11 are taxonomically scattered genera of orb-weaving spiders. These are your Zygilla, Scoloderus, Piranhas, Eustella of Aranids, then Nephila, Herenia, and Clytetra of also the Aranids. Then we have the tetrachnids, the Tetrachnetha. Then Pachygnetha, we have from the tetrachnids, then Theridiosomatids and Uloburids. And then we also have 8 non-orb weaving groups. So in Sachirids, Phaceania species, then Diplurids, Salticids, and Theridids, there has been the web asymmetrical nature of the webs has been reported in these groups. So the one of the most common spider of my study area is the Argiope pulchella. So this has not been studied. So I took this spider because for studying this type of things, we require a very large number of samples. So we have to study a large number of webs, then only we can either test a particular type of a hypothesis or a law. Okay, now the question arises, why is there a shift in such a symmetry? Why adults rarely build a perfect circular webs? Now, if we consider the sticky spirals function to capture the prey, a spider creates a large amount of sticky spiral all around it, so circular shape would be actually advantageous for a prey capture, right? But why is there a shift in the symmetry? So is the shift in symmetry has any foraging advantage? That is another question. To test the biogenetic law in Argiope pulchella and to answer the above question, we hypothesize that a spider, as the spider grows, there is an increase in web size. That is, the juveniles will build smaller webs and the adult will build larger webs. So this can be considered as a general hypothesis. So if it is smaller in size, it will create a small size web and adult will build a larger web. So is this true? We have to check, because sometimes we might get a sample in field where the adult spider did not build any capture spiral. We might think it to be a small web constructed by it. But then you have to think about the foraging history. Might it does not capture spiral and it had a very good foraging history. So the time where you had recorded the web as a sample, that was not the appropriate time to take the web measurement. So we can consider, we can neglect that web, because might be that night or the next day, it will be building again the entire foraging device. So for this hypothesis, we'll be taking the juveniles will take a small, will build a smaller web, whereas the adult will build a larger web. Then the second hypothesis is there is a variation in web symmetry from juvenile to adult stage. That is, as it grows, the web symmetry will be shifting to, and it will be more from symmetrical to an asymmetrical web. Okay, so to test the hypothesis, we need to do certain type of calculations. So we have to calculate the web area. Now I just want to make it clear that we cannot take the formula of a circle, pi r square, as a web area, because it is never a perfect circle. In very rare cases, we'll be getting that the upper radius, lower radius, left and right, all the radius are equal in length. So we will be taking this as a formula of an ellipse. So the web area can be calculated as pi into A into B. A is the semi-major axis and B is the semi-minor axis. So how to calculate the semi-major axis? It is the upper radius plus the lower radius divided by 2. This will give you some value of the semi-major axis. Similarly, the minor axis can be calculated as left radius plus right radius divided by 2. Then the web asymmetry can be calculated with the help of the asymmetrical index given by Nakata and Koke in 2010. The formula goes by upper radius minus the lower radius divided by upper radius plus the lower radius. So this is a very simple formula and it has certain inference. So when you get a value of the asymmetrical index as negative, negative value will tell you that this particular web has a larger lower part. And if you get the value as positive, it will tell you that this particular web has a larger upper part. And if you get the value 0, which means that the upper radius and lower radius were equal in size, in length. So this will indicate that the particular web is completely circular or a perfectly symmetrical web with large equal upper and lower parts. Okay, so this is a diagram where I want to show you about the upper radius and how we calculate the semi-major axis and minor axis. Since this is a vertical web, okay, remind this is a vertical ellipse. In that case, the longest diameter will be your major axis and the shortest diameter will be your minor axis. So now, since the hub has been displaced, we cannot take either the upper half or upper radius or the lower radius. Rather, we have to take the average of both to find out the entire area of the ellipse. Okay, so in this case, upper radius plus the lower radius divided by 2 will give you the value of A, whereas the left radius plus divided by 2 will give us the value of E. Then pi A into B will give you the entire area of this particular ellipse. This will be the total web area. So these are certain results I got in case of the juveniles. An interesting finding was that the juvenile, subadult, and I took 3 stage classes. Juvenile, subadults were 2 to 3 stages before the mature adult. So the juvenile, subadult, and the adult, none of them had a very much perfectly circular web. Few had circular webs where the upper radius and the lower radius were equal. That means we got the asymmetrical indexes entirely 0 or perfect 0. But in case of juveniles, we found there were 11% symmetrical webs. There were 89% asymmetrical webs. In case of subadult, the proportion of the symmetrical webs now reduced to 9%. And asymmetry increased to 91%. And in case of the adult webs, we found it was further reduced to only 4% of the webs which I have surveyed were perfectly symmetrical and 96% were asymmetrical webs. So yes, so the mean area which we were found, the highest, that means the total web area, were higher in adults, followed by subadults and juvenile. That means the adults build a very larger webs and the juveniles build the smaller webs. And the web symmetry which we found, it decreased from juveniles to subadults to adult spiders. That means this is achieved by displacement of the hub in the web, which largely contributes towards the web's asymmetrical nature. So juveniles will have more symmetrical webs, whereas adult will have more asymmetrical webs. Therefore, we can have an inference that smaller the web, higher was the web symmetry, and juveniles will have more or less circular webs, but adults will have an ellipsoidal webs with a larger lower web half in case of Argiope pulchella. Now the next question is, why adults deviate from the circular web plan? Is there any advantage? So logically, if we see that if the web area increases in all directions, there will be more capture area to trap different type of prey in all sectors of the web. And then favoring the larger lower part by adult Argiope should have certain advantage. So for this, we tested the relationship between the number of prey trapped in the upper web half and the lower web half. So let us see that is there any foraging advantage of this. So we performed a regression analysis and we found that it did not show any statistical significant relationship with the upper web half. So we have the number of prey in the the y-axis and lower web area in the x-axis. And it showed a significant relationship. The number of prey showed a significant relationship with the lower web half. And there was a regression equation also yielded for this. Next. So from the above study, we inferred few facts that Stabilimentum is not a constant feature of Argiope webs, though juveniles build a Dixip Stabilimentum and adults build a Cruciate Stabilimentum. And juveniles did not always build perfectly symmetrical webs all the time, but larger spiders build larger webs, which were more asymmetrical, and juvenile spiders build more symmetrical small-sized webs. Asymmetry in adult webs were contributed due to the construction of larger lower web part. And the last thing is there was a significant correlationship between the area of the lower web hub and the number of the prey trapped by. But there was no such relationship could be proved for the upper web hub. This indicates that increasing the lower web hub had some foraging advantage. We have gathered certain assumptions for the foraging advantage, which is supported by Masters and Moffat, Eberhard, and Risat and Walrat. So larger lower area increases the capture area at the lower half, which would ensure more prey capture in the direction matching to the spider's orientation. Traveling time needed for a downward facing spider to capture the prey and subdue it at the web half, which is the lower portion, lower web hub, will be more easier and less time consuming in comparison to detecting and capturing a prey which is located at the upper half. Then when a prey is intercepted in the web, it will try to struggle. Creating the larger lower half would ensure that there is a double capture of the prey that is being trapped in the upper half. For example, there is one prey which got stuck in the upper half and it is struggling and somehow it manages to escape. So if it rolls down and if you have a larger lower half, you will have more potential sites to recapture the tumbling down prey. So extending type of a larger lower part will be more beneficial. Body weight also plays a major important role. Now, due to gravity, traveling downwards become more easier than locating the prey and capturing the prey at the upper half. So this leads us to an assumption that the spiders of this group, as they grow from the juveniles to the adult stage, they increase in body size, and this may result in construction of webs which are larger in lower area. And in turn, this may increase the prey capture rates. So apart from studying the structural dynamics, there are some other works which is being done in our lab. This is about the rearing of a spider, which is a very cost-effective rearing box made with a cardboard and certain stems, thermocol blocks, black chart paper. And then I also have studied the prey spectrum and predatory behavior in captive condition and prey spectrum in wild. Kleptoparasitism study and egg parasitoidism study has also been done. So I also have studied, we studied the life cycle of Argiope pulchella. So the first picture you can see, there are the dispersal of the individual from a triangular shaped egg sac. So within the, this is being within the captive rearing box. Then there are the picture of the cluster of eggs within the egg sac, maturing eggs. Then next picture is of the prolarva, which does not bears the eyes or the eye spot or the lenses. Then the first insta, they have the lenses. Then there are certain about the entire from the egg stage up to the adult, there are approximately 13 stages. So these are certain intermediate stages of females and the males. So the now we also have studied about a little bit about the males and females and the breeding season. So here is the picture of the female making the egg-shaped stabilimentum in the upper portion, and down is the male. And this is a mating pair. We have also studied about the molting behavior of Argiope pulchella and also the habitat ecology. So this was about the session on web symmetry and asymmetry. I would like to acknowledge the entire team of Saaliga for inviting me to present my research work. And I'm very much grateful to my supervisor, Professor Jatin Kalita of Department of Zoology, Guwahati University, without whom it would have been impossible for me to understand such ecological things. Then I also thank all the faculty staff of Guwahati University, especially the Department of Zoology of Guwahati University, the head of the department, Prashanta Kumar Sekia sir, and my lab mates, all the faculties and staff of Assam Don Bosco University who have helped me throughout my PhD work. Then Assam State Biodiversity Board for giving me permission to work, UGC-BSR fellowship for helping me financially so that I can continue my work. And last but not the least, my family and my friends for having the patience with me. So thank you. Next slide. Can you give to the next slide? There are certain references I have given, which I have used in my recordings. Yes, you can just keep on giving next slide. These are certain references and very excellent papers. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you.